Hey everyone, welcome to the Pace Studio in New York City. We are here with Bassel and the Supernaturals. Welcome. This is actually part of our Bands Without Borders series, which is a cool series in which we get to talk with bands who have international reach and also whose music transcends both geographic and sociopolitical borders. So we're really excited to have you here today.
We're excited to be here.
What's the first song you're going to play for us today?
We're going to play Sneak You In.
Whenever
off our
you're
new
ready.
record.
I'm taken like a photograph, some might say. Chopped up and framed, matted for the world on display. Ooh. Take a look up close, tell me what you see. Oh, is it too surreal? Stories of misfortune and mistakes that just get louder, louder, louder. Oh, whoa, whoa. She's an angel, I must say. She digs into my mind. Got me changing for the better. Yes, I finally found the one. Ooh. Wake up and feel the weight off your shoulders while it's pouring rain outside. Learn to let go of the days and let your barrier down. Ooh. I've been reaching out for you, and I've got the feeling that you're reaching all around. So I sneak you in while the image starts raveling, breaking the ground. A reflection of me's pouring out. I sneak you in between my eyes and underneath my skin, underneath my skin. Oh, do-do-do-do-do. Could have seen that our love would defy the laws that reign. Will it time tell the truth? All the bumps along the way. Ooh. When you find the rhythm, you don't let it go. The beat feels stronger every night. Oh, it's everything I wanted, and I'm ready to build up our dreams. Oh, whoa, oh, whoa. Oh, whoa, whoa. I've been reaching out for you, and I've got the feeling that you're reaching all around. So I'll sneak you in while the image starts unraveling, breaking the ground. A reflection of me's pouring out. tin copies pouring out. I sneak you in between my eyes and underneath my skin, underneath my skin. Oh,
Sounds great, y'all. So like you said, that song was from your new album, Elements, which came out in February. And I saw online that you decided to donate a percentage of that album's pre-sale profits to the Karam Foundation. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that organization, but also why you did that and why that's important to you.
Yes, it's very personally relevant. I'm a first-generation Syrian American, and so the cause is very, very important to me. I have a lot of family that's impacted by this crisis. My parents were born and raised in Aleppo, Syria. That's where all my aunts and uncles and cousins, my entire extended family is from Aleppo. Half of them are still there. Half of them are located all over the world at this point. Karam Foundation is an amazing organization. It's a US-based, non-for-profit, based just outside of Chicago. So I like that local factor, but also the CEO I have a connection to, a familial back-ended connection to that I would have never expected. The CEO, Lina Sergia, her father and my father went to school together, and we didn't realize that until we
in
had
Aleppo?
done. Yes,
Wow.
yeah, in Aleppo. And so we had done a few collaborations together and then realized that that connection existed, and it just brought me that much closer. But what I particularly like about Karam Foundation is that their whole mission is centered around building a better future for Syria and empowering families, children, women to steer their future through sustainable development, through innovative education, through providing resources to steer the future of their country. I do see this as a long-term issue, and so to be able to invest in a long-term solution is very important.
Absolutely. So if you were born here in the U.S., at what point, even though the crisis in Syria has been getting worse and is in the news more often these days, your parents were the ones who immigrated. So at what point did they realize that they had to get out? What motivated them to move to the U.S.?
Well, my parents have moved to the States in the late 70s, and it was from a place of wanting to create a solid future for their family. This sentiment has existed. I don't think people realize that this sentiment has existed in Syria for a very long time. There was an uprising early in the 80s where the city of Hama was basically wiped out, 10,000 people virtually killed overnight. We didn't have social media to amplify it quite the same way, but those issues remained. And that anger has stayed silent, has stayed suppressed ever since then. And I remember going to Syria when I was younger, and you'd see pictures of the president pasted all over walls and everywhere, all over the town. And I was saying, what is this? Like, what is this all about? And my cousins every time would be like, dude, don't even talk about it. Don't talk about it. Like, just trust that this is how things need to be. And I really struggled to wrap my head around that. That fear has existed there, and people have been living in it for a very long time. And it's affected people in their basic human rights, but it's also affected their path to be able to create a future in a way that they want to. So my father needed to get out of Syria to ultimately create the life that he wanted to for his family.
Totally. I mean, that absolutely makes sense. You mentioned, fear and anger as the sentiments that, that you felt, that your folks felt in Syria. Bringing it back to music, those aren't the feelings in what we just heard. What drew you to soul music? It's such a positive form of expression. that doesn't necessarily convey anger and fear. What drew you to this form of music?
More than anything, the power of soul music comes from the emotional connection to that music, and to be able to tell a story through your tone, through your body language, through the words, through everything is connected. The whole message is infused. That was really powerful to me, especially when I drilled into Otis Redding when I first moved into Chicago, was when that hit me hard. I heard I've Got Dreams, and I just couldn't stop listening. And there is a lot of pain in that song. And there is a lot of pain in soul music, and that's one of the things that makes it timeless. During some of the most racially tense periods, this is how people found a way to process it, to talk about it, and to share in that experience. So that was really powerful for me. And especially with Otis Redding, it took me down a whole Otis Redding train, got a bunch of documentaries. I saw this one clip in particular. It was a performance, I want to say it was 1967, don't quote me on it, in Norway. And he went, and it didn't matter the shape or the size or the color. Every single person was just dancing their butts off. They couldn't help it. And just to see the power. And really, Otis Redding's entire experience. I mean, he existed during the most racially tense period of our modern history. And yet he found a way to bring people together through music. And you'd have blacks on one side or whites, and they'd break down the barriers and all come together in this beautiful music. So that was really powerful to me. And I feel like as a Syrian person in this day and age, to be able to tell a story in an accessible way to a lot of people who otherwise aren't meeting Syrian people or Middle Eastern people altogether is really, really important to create a personality for the Syrian person in this context. So it's kind of naturally found a fit with our music.
Totally. I had that experience listening to Sam Cooke, which similar circumstances to Otis Redding, so good choice there. Why don't you guys launch into your second song, and then we'll talk a little bit about its significance afterwards.
Okay. This one's called Lost.
She's lost. She's part of the world today. Break off a piece of my soul and bury it underneath the ground. This cycle's ordinary. Oh, we're stumbling, staring down our fate with the wrong impression. They stole another story. The cold and rainy morning. Well, I scream and shake, but I feel numb. Oh, watch as I float away in my own grave, searching the haze for shore. Never will I land. I'm making the same mistakes. I'm running from myself again. Quite a living apparition. I'm surely disheveled. While I wait and see, they'll take care of everything. Black clouds are threatening to swallow us whole. On my own. Lost. Someone new, I presume. Wake up. Another day I spent lamenting for her. I'm picking up the pieces left behind from her memory. No more searching for an answer. Just take some time to breathe. Chords in the door, and I'm shaking from top down. How do I pull myself in? Bury the hatchet before I lose my soul. I'm running from myself again. living apparition, I'm surely disheveled. Ooh, while I wait and sing, they'll take care of everything. Black clouds are threatening to swallow us whole. Myself again, quite a living apparition, surely disheveled. Ooh, while I wait and sing, they'll take care of everything. Black clouds are threatening to swallow us whole.
So that song in particular has a heavy history. Do you mind getting into that and telling us a little bit about it?
No problem. So that song is called Lost. It's on our new album. And the song came out of a story of my cousin in Syria, Aya Sabah. She was a young girl, PhD student in microbiology. And she was going to visit her sister in Turkey for a little bit. She was on the bus on the way out, and somebody, a sniper, a militiaman, just kind of shot at the bus as targeting practice, and my cousin was a victim in that. So she passed away during this intense crisis. So that struck me in a very, very deep place. And as we were talking about earlier with soul music and needing to feel very emotionally connected to the music, I really focused on that concept of loss. Not only has my cousin passed away in Syria, several of my family members have completely lost their homes. Most of my family members have lost everything they've owned. We've lost our bassist in the last year. It's one of the most difficult things that we've ever experienced. He passed away last April. Loss is the most raw and vulnerable emotion that we feel as human beings, and it's something that we can all access. I think a lot of times people feel like Syria is something very distant, and they don't know how to impact this situation. And I think that first step is feeling emotionally connected, and loss tells that story. So by focusing in on that emotion and creating that environment for the listener, the idea is to connect you to our story.
Absolutely. I'm kind of wondering, though, so much of this seems to be your story, as in you are the spokesperson because you're the one with this, connection to a place, like you said, that feels so distant. Did the rest of y'all know what you were getting into? Slate?
Is that yes or
modest,
no?
modest nodding.
Well, early on, I guess, and I don't want to speak for you guys, maybe you have something else to say about this, but I think early on in the context of a lot of our collaborations, this war hadn't escalated to where it's at. It's not like we came together to write music around this particular issue.
Right. You had a record come out in 2013.
Right. Yeah, we thoroughly enjoy playing music together. I think as part of this particular record, it was an exercise to think about how to create music and colors and moods around the context. And that was very collaborative. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How did, please.
I also feel like the band has really come to its voice and found its voice, and is able to articulate kind of our mission statement much more effectively now than when I joined the band a couple of years ago. Obviously, this was something that was impacting Bassel and something that he was talking about and something that we were doing and talking about on the road. But I feel like it's really kind of come to a head in the last year, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Why don't you tell us a little bit, about how you met in the first place? Obviously, this band is not new. Mm-hmm. Even if you have a new record out, February.
Yeah, it's a community, really. Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys I met, they were in different music programs at various schools, and I met Brandon at this point 4 years ago. It's been a while. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. And a lot of that is just Brandon introducing me to another musician, or Carl introducing me to another musician. So really, all of those connections came in from one way or another. And I think especially when our bassist passed away last April, we noticed just how expansive our community really was, and how I think we were always kind of revolving around Luke, and eventually just found our way to connecting with each other. It's like the world kind of had an intention for us to all come together.
Totally. Are these autographs on your bass, by the way?
I'm going to start calling them autographs.
I got you.
It says trash. It's just the word trash over and over and over and over. It's my autograph.
Now we know.
It's become a fun thing. Everybody gets to write trash on Luke's bass.
It would be my honor. What's the last song you've got for us today?
Well, the last song is called Blind Man Climbing. This is a particularly funky song because tonight we're doing Get Down for Refugees.
Oh, we're going to talk about that afterwards.
So we're going to get down properly with paste to give you a taste of what to expect for tonight.
My body is ready.
Somebody new. I'm a blind man climbing, nowhere else to go. Well, it don't mean I believe it, it don't mean I don't see it. Well, I care about us, and I want the world to see. Well, I've got to say that I've changed since you knew me. Well, I'm not wild, I'm just embracing my youth. Oh, well, I know that in time we'll all want to raise a family. I'd make that sacrifice if I knew that you choose me. 'Cause I somebody new. I'm a blind man climbing, nowhere else to go. Well, don't mean I believe it, don't mean I don't see it. But I care about us, and I want the world to see. I'm on my way back to New York, girl. Well, oh, the feelings remain, but I look the other way. Hey, oh, yeah. My pride has subsided without you. Yeah. My undivided attention belongs to you. Well, only you. 'Cause I wanna make this thing work. So bad that I'm wrapped up with you. Just to talk, just to meet somebody new. I'm a blind man climbing, nowhere else to go. Well, don't mean I believe it, don't mean I don't see it. But I care about us, and I want the world to see. That I'm wrapped up with you. Just to talk, just to meet somebody new. I'm a blind man climbing, nowhere else to go. Don't mean I believe it, don't mean I don't see it. But I care about us, and I want the world to see. It's that I'm wrapped up with you. Just to talk, just to meet somebody new. I'm a blind man climbing, nowhere else to go. Don't mean I believe it, don't mean I don't see it. But I care about us, and I want the world. Yes, I want the world to see.
Funky indeed. Reminds me I need a wah pedal.
Goal accomplished.
Duh. So normally at this point, it's when we talk about kind of like what's coming up, where folks can see you, and I'll get to that. But I think it's important to look back for a second beforehand, because you played a cool South by Southwest showcase called Contraband, and you do a lot of work in terms of performance and communication and education at colleges and universities. So that wasn't quite a question, but it was a rather broad prompt that I was hoping you could get into a little bit.
Funny you should mention. No, yes, it's deeply embedded into what we do. So obviously we play a lot of venues and festivals, but on a deeper level, we involve ourselves with a lot of university collaborations or even working with churches, and particularly conservative areas where maybe there just isn't a conversation really moving around Syria and the humanitarian crisis, and just kind of getting into spaces without a political agenda, all just from a compassionate place of, here's my story, here's how my family is impacted by this, and here are ways that you can help them return home. So it's not a political agenda or anything. You remove the discomfort of that and create a space for people to be able to talk about their discomfort a little bit. So those have been some of the most empowering experiences of my entire life. And ultimately, that's what brought us to South by Southwest. So Contraband was a showcase that featured artists from the 7 countries targeted by the immigration ban. So we represented Syria as part of that. And it was a really powerful opportunity. And we've been out there for over 6 years talking about what's happening in Syria, with a lot of people kind of hesitating because it's difficult for them to separate a political crisis from a humanitarian crisis. But once the refugee ban came into place, and people took a deeper interest in what's happening in Syria, why these policies came into place, they're more interested in creating environments where we can talk about that. And it was really beautiful to see that at South by Southwest, and to see this conversation moving to a national platform where we could come and be as loud as possible and as funky as we possibly could be around this. So that was a very, very, very powerful experience for us, and there was so much excitement or enthusiasm for this particular conversation that they ended up opening up a panel discussion ahead of it. And it was such an amazing experience. And the other artists that were involved with this showcase just had these rich stories. Some of them are refugees themselves. One of them was actually a captive. He was held captive, and he was forced into the military for a while and had to run away from his country. And now he's in Canada. Emmanuel Jal, he's an amazing artist. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I read his book a few years ago.
Yeah, he's an amazing soul. And it was just very inspiring to be around artists with this story. And I'm really glad that we ended up being able to have a panel discussion through it to get to know one another and the stories that brought us to where we were, all the very different paths, but with this overarching similarity in our stories. So it was an awesome experience.
Totally. So the fact that y'all are playing a benefit concert tonight at the Mercury Lounge is nothing new. So anyone tuning in who's based in New York City, that event is called Get Down for Refugees. Proceeds go to the International Rescue Committee. How did that event come together?
That event happened before we were on it.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah, which was great to see. I feel like we were destined to be part of this event. We were already touring in the days prior and after, and it didn't even necessarily make sense for us to move east of where we were, but I just kind of glanced at the Mercury Lounge schedule. I saw that this show was taking place, and the other groups, Future Type and Denny Love, were part of that. So I reached out and said, we need to play on this show. And not even an hour later, they responded and said, yes.
Excellent.
We need to do this. And so it was really beautiful to see that, and it seemed like fate brought it all together. We had an opening on that date, and we just made it work. So it was pretty short notice. It all happened in the last few weeks.
Well, we're glad that it did work out and that you guys are here. So, looking at these Facebook Live comments, not to put you on the spot more so than already, but you actually have a request for Advertise Me, if I can nudge y'all.
Who's requesting?
Yes. Yep.
Ben?
Okay.
Okay, we'll do it for Ben. We all know who we weren't going to do it for.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah?
As long as we have the time and space to do it, we would be happy to.
The
We're getting
floor
the
is
thumbs
yours.
up from the audience in the back. So I do want to quickly mention too, while the New York people might be tuning in, that I'm looking at a benefit for Syria in July, and to please stay tuned for that.
Yes, we will absolutely stay tuned for that.
All right. This is Advertise Me off our last record. This is about the balance. This is about the balance, the double life, working 9 to 5 in a van, and then playing all night.
Well, let the steam fall into you and form the wrinkles through your skin. Well, time stops you cold and you're all bruised. You just shoulder all the demeaning clues. You're afraid to quit until you become too ill. Am I too wrong-winded for you? How would you act if you were younger? You
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We appreciate the extra song, the extra treat.
Any more requests? No Freebird. No.
No, thank you so much for getting real, getting funky with us here at Paste as part of our Bands Without Borders series. Again, if you are in New York City tonight, you can see Bassel and the Supernaturals at the Get Down for Refugees benefit concert, Mercury Lounge, doors at 9:30. Go give your money to the International Rescue Committee, and you guys come back anytime.
Thank you so much. We'll take you up on that.